Welcome to Earth, a love story. I'm your host, Robin Lassiter. So, where have you guys been? Just kidding, it's me. I've been busy, but in really good ways. It's been a lot of work and really exciting. I built myself a brand new website, which is now live and includes a lot of new resources and services and ways to engage. And it's all full of color. And my old website was black and white, mostly white, and this one is full of color and mostly black, and I love it so much. So check it out if you have some time. I'm really proud of it. It is robinlassiter.com. honeyheart.org will still get you there, but I'm phasing that out and going to be doing robinlassiter.com from now on, so take a peek. Also, I don't know, have you guys heard of this new phenomenal podcast called The Telepathy Tapes? It's making the round, I know, in many of our communities, but if you haven't checked it out yet, I truly cannot recommend it highly enough. To me, it feels like some sort of proof that we're on a good timeline, that everything just might work out, that we're going to make it through the apocalypse, and hooray, it's not an ending, but actually is an unveiling like we all suspected. Yeah, it makes me feel like there's this doorway or portal or gateway or bridge, and that, yeah, we're going to have to transition through something, and it might be hard, but just as fast as our collective shadow is rising, our golden shadow is also emerging, and it's really beautiful and enlivening, and I can't wait to see what else comes. Another thing that I saw recently was this experiment that was done with plants and how they can sense their owners, which is really cool and amazing because my next guest, not on this episode, but the next episode that's coming, is a woman who had that experience directly of communicating with her plants. And it's just mind-blowing and wonderful and amazing. And it is across the bridge of science. You know, science and this more enchanted world do need to connect, and there are connections there. And so that's really exciting. So these are a couple of things that are on my mind as I've been, going through my own portals and doorways and having bizarre and wild experiences that just continue. I think I'm getting more used to it being the new normal, but it's still taking a little bit of time. One of those, though, did you guys notice the sun, the fucking sun blasting us with something? I don't even know, but in November, that was a really incredible experience. It was a little bit destabilizing, but definitely felt this incredible energy coming in. So I've been integrating. I'm taking the month of December to do deeper integration, deeper work, working on business stuff, but also really consciously creating space for dreaming and downloads and for these bigger experiences to come through, for connection with nature. And it feels already really good. The dreams have already been really, really powerful. And some out-of-body experiences are back. It's all happening. It's all happening. And there's so much that's going on and so much I want to talk about, but I'm going to continue into my month of work and integration and creating and dreaming and downloads. And I think during that time, I'll probably be recording some solo episodes that are talking about it. I'm really trying to explore ways that I can share the deeper and kind of weirder and wilder things that happen in the other worlds in real time. And I know I've talked to you guys about that lately. So that's part of this as well. What does that look like? I feel pretty deconditioned at this moment from the pace of the overculture. It's fastest way to go is slow, guys, for realsies. And as soon as I give myself space and time, I feel all of this potentiality open up and it all starts flooding in. So that's the vibe I'm in right now, and I'm really excited about it. I have this vision that as December goes along with this Mercury retrograde and me taking this space, and I know many of you are doing the same, and also that it's crazy holiday time and it's super busy for everybody, but I feel like that when we get to the end of the year, we're all going to somehow be caught up together in a kind of braided timeline. I don't know. It's just an intuition. I hope it comes to pass. But anywho, here we go. On this episode of the podcast, I speak with the delightful Priya Assal. Priya is an artist and a teacher and a temple keeper. She is the founder and head of education of the School of Inner Journey Practices, which is a feminine mystery school whose mission it is to restore and protect the dignity, sovereignty, and safety of Farsi-speaking women with educational programs and content in self-development, self-empowerment, and self-care. Priya and I talk about our work in service of the goddess and the missions that we've both been given and are carrying out around that. And I don't talk about this part of my work in life often on the podcast, but my home, my dome, as many of you know, I live in a dome in the middle of nowhere. I consider it a temple. I consider the work that I'm doing here for the goddess. And you'll hear Priya and I reference that. It wasn't the intention of our time together, but as I was editing and going through this episode, what I realized is that much of it, particularly towards the end, but all along the way, much of this is a love letter to other temple keepers, to goddess worshipers, to those of us who are on a mission of service and love, those of us that are holding points of light across the planet and connecting us. And of course, the temple that you keep could be a 2-bedroom in suburbia or an apartment in the middle of a city. It doesn't really matter. It could be a temple that you've built yourself in the middle of nowhere, which is what both Priya and I have done. And I just want to say, if you're holding it down out there, we see you and we feel you. And this episode is in gratitude for you, for all of us who are anchoring in a new way to be on the planet. And it's never felt more present and accessible to me and important. So thank you. We see you. We love you. And full transparency, I sit on the board of the School of Inner Journey Practices. It's a US-based nonprofit. And Priya's work there is amazing. If you're inspired to support the school and that work, please check the show notes. I will have instructions on how to support her. Okay, now please enjoy my conversation with the sublime Priya Assal. Yeah, we've been friends, 2.5? I don't know, 3 years? Something like that.
Gosh, so we were both in the Maiden to Mother teacher training program with Sarah Wilson. And, the reason why I chose to do that program was because of the School of Inner Journey Practices, which, you are a part of. And my background is in fine arts. I've been an artist for 30 years. My academic career is in the arts. And in 2020, when I was getting ready to deliver my master's degree exhibition in Chicago at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, COVID happened and everything closed down. And the school sent us an email saying, we're not going to have an exhibition, an in-person exhibition. It's going to be an online exhibition. And in fact, the Art Institute of Chicago was the first school, I think, in the world who had an online thesis exhibition for artists. It had never happened before. So, and then they said to us, you need to redo your thesis project so that it can make sense online. And I remember I had been painting sacred geometry tapestries for a year and a half, preparing to take all this stuff from Tehran to Chicago. And 2 months before this exhibition, COVID happens. They tell us we need to change our projects. And I'm like, God, what am I going to do? And I decided that I was going to take these workshops, these healing workshops that I was doing and sort of sharing with people on Instagram, and sort of present that as an art project, present the process of self-development and healing in the context of art. like healing ourselves and alchemizing who we are, treating that as, the biggest form of art that we can practice. So then I got really involved with the school and I was, offering these workshops, but I knew something was missing and I just needed I needed context for what I was doing. And when I discovered the Maiden to Mother methodology, where that centers the goddess and centers the feminine and healing the inner child and like this whole conversation, I knew that this really was could be at the core of my practice. And so I decided to engage in the program, and you were also engaged in that program. Fast forward, I came to the US for our graduation, and we were the retreat, our graduation retreat was at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. And I remember I arrived before anybody else, and it was like really late. It was like around midnight, and I figured everybody's sleeping. Okay, I'm gonna get in my room. I get in the room, and I'm like, okay, it's my birthday. I'm gonna pour myself a nice bath and, put on a little bit of music. And my roommate is not here yet. It's gonna be a great night. I have a fantastic night for myself. I'm gonna wake up in the morning. I'm gonna meet everyone. And I go to bed, and if you remember, there were two beds and one of them was a single bed by the side of the wall, and then there was the queen size bed in the middle. And I remember I went to bed, I laid down, and the bed started shaking. The bed started shaking. There was like this feeling of like a mini tiny little earthquake, and I was just like, what is happening? And I'm a little bit obsessed with ETs. Okay. I don't consider myself an experiencer. I've never seen a UFO except in like a couple of dreams. I've never encountered like what you would call an ET, but I am so fascinated by the entire that phenomenon, just fascinated by it completely. And I've wished so many times in my life that this could happen for me, that I could have like a tangible experience of seeing a UFO. And I remember that night I even went by the window of the bathroom and I looked outside and I was like, God, like, will this happen for me one day? Like, will I be blessed enough to finally have an encounter? So I go to bed and then like, my bed shook a little bit and I thought it was a little bit weird. And I think I moved to the small bed because it scared me, and I just like I switched over to the small bed. Anyway, the night goes on, passes. I wake up in the morning and I start seeing people trickle in. And I realize, wait a minute, there was nobody in that entire area last night. I was completely 100% by myself. Had I known that I was completely alone in the middle of the desert, I don't know that I would have been able to fall asleep. It would have been definitely too scary for me. So everybody arrives, and their roommates arrive, and my roommate doesn't arrive. And I thought to myself, gosh, well, that's really strange. Everybody's got a roommate except me. So I went to breakfast, came back from breakfast, and there was this redheaded woman who was new. And I looked at her and I was like, I wonder if this is my roommate. And lo and behold, it was you. And in fact, you were my roommate. And I know that you had gone into our room and you had looked at her at the stuff that I had, my little, I don't know, rosary and little things, crystals, and I remember you telling me, okay, I think we're gonna get along. And then the conversation started, and I discovered Robin. And I discovered, we talked about like you having, the experiences that you have, and you remember how overjoyed I was by that. I mean, Robin,
I
really.
have to say, from my side of things, like, I don't know if you know this, but I had at that time in my life, I was still compartmentalizing my experiencer life. And I was very terrified in this group of women that we had been together for almost a year. I talked about it a little bit, but not very much. And I was really afraid to kind of out myself in this way because this whole program is about like the mother and the goddess and the mud and the blood and the earth and like very like grounded. And it's not this spiritual thing where you fly out into other bodies. It's like we're here on the planet with feet on the ground and it's about the body. And so I had really kept all of that compartmentalized. And so when I don't even know how it came up, but I must have mentioned something and your utter delight, like I could not have had a better roommate or a better experience of coming out in that space. You were like giddy, like a little child, like so excited. You knew all about it. You knew about like mantis beings. You knew there's, and nobody, unless you're an experiencer or in this world and like fascinated like you are, nobody, you tell somebody about a mantis experience that has no context, they think you're fucking crazy. And so it was the softest landing. It bonded us instantly. We stayed up, I think, that first night until midnight or something talking. And we finally were like, we have to go to sleep because our day starts so early tomorrow. But yeah, that's my experience of it, was just the softest landing into an integration and acceptance of my full self, the goddess and the ETs, the earth and these other parts of me. And then we've been like this, we've been fast friends ever since. And it was incredible.
Oh my God, I always say I am, the biggest fly on your wall, you know, and if I can be, I want to be like, to me, there's no conversation more fascinating than this kind of stuff. It just isn't. I've seen so many videos on Gaia, like anything that I can get my hands on. And I was like, really into it back then, like fully into it back then. So for me, like for the universe to have brought you into my life, gosh, it just was, like that was my birthday gift, it was such a birthday gift. I'm so grateful. I am so grateful we met, Robin, and I feel so honored to have come to your temple. That was also such an incredible experience, to watch it get built and to spend time there. I spent probably some of the darkest days of my life when I came to your temple. Those were very, very hard times for me. And I was really held, by the temple itself, and you gave me your bed, and I just was able to grieve so hard. Yeah, thank you for holding that space for me. I was stuck out of Iran, for a year and a half. I wasn't able to go back. This was because I had come to the US just to graduate from the program. My plan was to go back to Iran. And then 2 years ago, the Masa Amini, incident happened where, she was killed. And then there was, that big, massive upheaval in Iran. And things became really scary. And I was afraid to go back. And I got kind of stuck in the US in limbo for, 6 months, thinking I'm not going to go back home. And I need to make a life for myself again, because I've immigrated 7 times in my life. I've always been on the road since I was 8 years old. I was born 2 years before the Iranian Revolution and grew up during the war when Iran was at war with Iraq. Left Iran with my mother and my twin sister when we were 8 years old. We moved to France where we had some family. Then my dad was able to join us. And then we moved to Canada at the age of 12. This is very traumatic, for children to just be like uprooted and move to like a new country, a place with a completely different culture, a place where you don't speak the language. And then my parents decided to go back to Iran when my sister and I were 16 years old, and they took us back when we were 17, which was another layer of like trauma, going back to Iran, which is a completely different reality of life than Canada or France. And then, and then I moved again and then later moved to the United States. I mean, I've just been on the road like so much until I finally said, I want to go back to Iran. I want to go and live in Iran. And it was a big process of decolonization for me. It was a very conscious choice to share myself with Iranian people, do the work that I'm doing on the soil here in Iran, and work with Iranian women and be near my family, speak my own language, relearn my own language, essentially, you know? And so 2 years ago, when I came to the US and felt like, oh shit, I can't go back again, it just was, I had a nervous breakdown and it all happened, you know, when I came to visit you. It was like I was in the thick of it. In total despair. And eventually, by March, I came to see you over Christmas. By March, I said, I don't care what happens to me if I go back and they arrest me or they kill me. If I'm going to die, I'd rather die at home because I'm going to die here anyway. I'm going to wither away. I'm so sad and I'm so depressed and I feel so lost. And I went back and thank God nothing happened. And you know, I'm still here. And I'm, you know, as you know, I'm building a temple, a goddess temple of my own here in the city of Kashan. I'm in Kashan right now talking with you. Kashan is 3 hours south of Tehran. It's in the middle of the desert, and it's one of the oldest cities in the world. It's 8,000 years old. You know, to do the work that I do with women here and to just walk on the soil and activate my own body and the bodies of other women here is like it's like reawakening the goddess that has lived here, like literally, you know, because when we talk about 8,000 years of history, like she was around, you know, those times were matriarchal. Life was very, very different. And then, you know, her culture and her essence was buried and forgotten. And, you know, when we reawaken ourselves and reawaken to our feminine and reawaken the feminine qualities within ourselves, we are bringing her back, you know, resurrecting her from the soil, from the earth. So, um, as lonely as I am here, like I literally haven't seen another human being in the flesh in 14 days. I've been here for 3 weeks now, and I haven't seen anybody since my dad left 16 days ago. But I feel at home. I feel like this is exactly where I need to be. And I'm discovering that it's possible for us to be in relationship with things other than humans. Like when I used to think about relationships, I was like, well, relationships only happen with other human beings. And for the first time in my life, I'm realizing, no, I mean, I get that relationships with other human beings is necessary, but there are so many other things we can be in relationship with. We can be in relationships with the trees. We can be in relationship with the sky. There's just this incredible sky that Kashan has, with the earth. We can be in relationship with the house. I believe I married this house. Like I literally have had dreams of holding on to the pillars of the house as if the pillar was my lover. You know, people always ask me, they're like, why Kashan out of all the places that you could have gone to? Even the Iranians ask me that, like, why would you want to go in like a small town, the desert like Kashan? And I'm just like, I met a house and I fell in love with it. And I married the house, like literally.
Yeah.
So this house is like the most sacred relationship that I've ever had in my life. And while I have very little contact with other humans here, I I'm living a rich life, you know, with the house, with the sky, with the trees. And then I have, you know, of course, I interact with people online a lot. I spend a lot of time on WhatsApp, you know, communicating with my sisters and friends.
I just want to highlight a couple of points in your story that I think are so profound. One of them, you know, you're talking about that time when you were in the United States, you couldn't go home. And it was this incredibly dark night of the soul for you. And it was months and months, and you were moving from place to place to place. And you were like trying to get something going. You were trying to create a life in the US, trying to like find some other avenue because you couldn't go home and it was really dangerous to go home. And what I remember during that time, and I remember this from from our time, our time at Ghost Ranch, the ceremonies that we did, the rituals that we did. I, I remember coming back into our room like the night that we did our final initiation. We just looked at each other and we both said, "Oh fuck, we drank the Kool-Aid. We are in this. We belong to the goddess. Okay. Whatever has happened, we are initiated now into this and there's no going back." And even then, the messages that you were getting, the visions that you were getting is that you belonged on Iranian soil. And then all of life and the world seemed to say, no, that's not possible. That's not happening. And it was when I have chills, surrendered to that vision and said, I don't care if I die. I'm going home to be on that soil because that's the mission. I feel like you were given that mission by the goddess to go home, to create this temple, to create your school, your mystery school for women. So I just want to really highlight that. It seemed impossible. It seemed like there was not an option. She closed all the doors.
She made my life hell,
Mm-hmm.
so that I would go back. She, exactly like you said, she closed every door. Otherwise, I would have probably stayed,
Mm-hmm.
but she left me no choice. And, I've lived most of my life outside of Iran. And the experience and I've lived a good life outside of Iran. But the experience that I've always had was that I wasn't living my purpose as long as I wasn't in Iran. Like, I've lived in such beautiful, I lived in Paris, I lived in New York, I lived in Toronto, I lived in India, in Pune, I've lived in San Francisco, and really just wonderful, beautiful places. But when I'm outside of Iran, it's like I look at the trees and I look at the sky and I look at people and I just feel like I don't feel identified with anything and I don't find meaning in anything. And there's always this like underlying feeling that I'm I'm on standby. And as hard as life is in Iran, because it is a difficult life, it has meaning. It just feels like this is where I should be. And I just can't live without, I just can't live without that feeling anymore. You know, 3 nights ago, I was doing yoga. It was between 8 and 8:30 p.m. And suddenly my bedroom door like snapped open. And I was like, what the hell was that? And then I started hearing this rumble in the sky, like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa. And I thought like I was tripping. I came out of my bedroom and the house that I live in it's a historic house. It's 300 years old. And the way it's designed is, like it has a court. It's like the Moroccan houses, where you have like it's a square and you've got a body of water in the middle and everything, is built around it. It's a four-sided house. And it's indoors and outdoors. So like in order to go from one room to another room, you're crossing a hallway that's essentially an outdoors hallway. So these houses were built to work with the weather. So like when it's really hot, you move downstairs. And then one side of the house is for the winter, one side of the house is for the summer. Anyway, so I go out of my bedroom and I'm outside immediately and I'm hearing this rumble in the sky, and it feels like it's shaking. And I thought there's an earthquake, but why isn't it developing into anything bigger? Am I tripping? Did I just imagine this? Why did my bedroom door snap open like that? All right, I go back, I continue my practice, I go take a bath later. And then as I'm like, I'm going to bed, I go online and then I see these videos that are showing these missiles over the Kashan sky. And then I find out that Iran has launched missiles towards Israel. That was the night when this happened. And Like that's what I'm living with, you know? And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, I'm sure Israel's going to respond. When, how, where, I don't know. None of us knows. But this is what we live with on the day to day in Iran. We have no guarantee of a stable, near or far future ever. We're always at the brink of the next disaster, the next, chaos, whether it's the economy or it's another war or it's being arrested for whatever reason, there is just so there is like in a sense there is no safety or no guarantees of safety. But the truth is that that's like that everywhere. It's just that it's so much better disguised in, I don't know, Western countries. The illusion of safety, the illusion of stability, the illusion of order is really well performed. But it's not like that in Iran. Like we're not in the illusion of it. It's in our face that you have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, and you really cannot count on anything. And you just better make the best of what you got in the moment that you have it. But in spite of all of this, I still rather be here because I feel like I am on the right timeline and I'm living my purpose and things are meaningful to me. And so, finally, after like 40 years of moving back and forth and traveling around the world, I'm really, really happy that I've tied myself down to a house in Iran. Again, I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, but I pray that I'll never have to pack up and leave again.
It's such a good opportunity to go back to that moment when you were 16 or 17 and you were in complete despair because you
Mhm.
had come back to Iran, and that was one of the mystical experiences that you had that was life defining at that time.
Oh, gosh. So my parents, as I said, decided to move back to Iran and then basically dragged my sister and I back as well. And that was very difficult. I think we were in 11th grade and hardly spoke any Farsi. And there we were, like back in Iran. We couldn't go to school because we couldn't read and write Farsi. We were trying to get into this international school, but it was really difficult. And, my dad had to work on whatever the process for about a year. So I was really, really depressed and I had no idea who I was. And I was like, there's no God. I'm sure there's no God. There's nothing that I believe in. Everything's like meaningless. And it was my first depression. I remember several things that happened. One of them was I remember I obviously desperately wanted to believe that there was such thing as a God. I wanted it so bad, and I needed proof. I needed a lot of proof. And I remember like one of my experiences in the process of that was my dad. Eventually, when we found this international high school to go to. My dad was driving us to school one morning, and I remember I was sitting on the back of this Camaro. It was my mom's Camaro, and my dad was driving. My twin was sitting in the front, and I was just. It was we were going on the highway, and it was the fast lane of the highway. Have I told you the story before?
A little bit
It
of
was the
it, yeah.
fast lane. Yeah, it was the fast lane of the highway. And I remember I was sitting there just so desperate and so depressed. And I was like, if there is a God, I something has to happen. Like I really, really need a sign. And as I'm like focusing on this thing, on this sign that I'm asking for, suddenly the car slows down and then stops and then turns horizontal in the fast lane of the highway. And I remember like my dad was kept like, turning the key in the thing, and he's just like, what is happening? Why did the car stop? Why? And he couldn't make sense of it. I remember like sitting in the back being like, what? No way. What the hell? is this really happening? And then I was really like scared because it's like the highway, cars are going by us, this is like really dangerous. So then I'm like, okay, fine, fine, I got it. Can we get the car going again? And I'm saying this to myself, and then the car starts again, and we hit the road again. And well, obviously, this was quite an extraordinary incident. Another thing that happened, I remember I went to a party without telling my parents. And if you know anything about Iran, you know that like parties and alcohol and boys and girls mingling together is, illegal. And I remember there was this guy that I really liked. He invited me to go to this party. I lied to my parents about it, go to the party. And then as soon as I enter the party, it was like it just was very obvious that it wasn't a safe place and that the religious police was probably going to find out about it because it was really loud and it was really close to the street. And I was just like, oh no, this does not feel good. And as soon as I started thinking it doesn't feel good, 20 like soldiers, religious police soldiers, like barged in and shooting, guns in like the ceiling. And all the kids were like trying to escape through the doors, through the windows. And it was like the second story. We were on the second floor. I ended up jumping from the second floor to the parking lot. And I remember everyone got caught, but I was able to jump over a fence, hide behind the fence. And then I remember I was sitting there like crouched in a corner while I'm like watching everybody's shadow on the wall in the parking, like getting arrested. And there was like this big bus outside and they were taking people away. And I remember thinking, God, if I survive tonight, I swear to God, if I get away with this, I'm going to believe that there is something greater than me protecting me. And I was the only person in that party. There were maybe like 50 people there that night. Every single person was arrested and then taken to jail. I was the only one who got away with it. After this, I was just like, fine, I'm going to give you a chance. After that, my path to God was really Islam, interestingly, and I grew up in a family that's absolutely not religious. But I remember I would wake up around like 4 a.m. and I would hear the sound of the call to prayer, like quite loud. And I thought, well, there must be a mosque near our house. So I went to my mom eventually and I said, Mom, where is the mosque near our house? And she said, there is no mosque near our house. And I was like, but I hear the call to prayer every morning at sunrise. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that was like how, the world of the mystical world of Islam started pulling me towards itself. And eventually I met my mentor, who's still a woman who's still part of my life and who's a Muslim practitioner. And then I started, my journey with Islam, and I would pray, and that like my connection and my conversations with God were through the prayer practices in the Muslim tradition that I had for years and years and years. But I think I digressed and I forgot the actual question that you were asking me. Help me back.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I know that you had a mystical experience at that moment of despair when you were just asking for a sign. And that
Yeah.
is something that has been on my mind lately, like this, like coming to, similarly to when you're just like, I don't care, I'm going home. I don't care what will
Mhm.
happen. Sort of this point of like surrender and like coming up against an edge and like something's got to give. You've got to give me
Yeah.
something. And it's a true
Yeah.
moment of
Yeah.
there's nothing being held back. It's
Yeah.
this moment of full surrender. So I wanted you to tell that story. And
Yeah.
then just inviting you into, the story of becoming what I consider just more deeply human, more of an integrated human
Mhm.
through our experience with that. Part of our
Mhm.
experience has been through the feminine and through
Mhm.
integrating these younger parts of ourselves, the wounded parts of ourselves, the wounded maiden, coming into a kind of femininity and womanhood that I've always been able to see on other women. Like, when you're just walking through a grocery store and a woman walks by and you're like, oh, there's like a gravitas, there's just this
Mhm.
this indescribable quality of like this embodied woman. And I never knew how
Mhm.
to like how to get like how does one become that? Does it just happen with age? Like not necessarily, right? Like it's something that happens, some kind of integration and journey. And so I'm just inviting you to talk about your journey and then how you're also helping other women on that journey, that same journey now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens through the process of very difficult experiences in which you think there's no way you're going to survive this. And then you do. And then you realize that, there is something after death, the non-physical death. For me, my initiation was the loss of my dog 3 years ago. While I was in the Made into Mother program, my dog, that was the love of my life, um, was dying, and she wasn't that old. She was 8 years old, and the vets couldn't figure out what was wrong with her, and she started getting slowly paralyzed. First it was the legs, and it was the front, and then it was like she couldn't, like, over 8 months. It was this very torturous. It was a torturous, slow process of dying, and I had to sit there and watch this happen. And I did not want to accept it. I was like, I will find what is wrong with her and I will heal her. And I gave everything that I had. I prayed night and day. I begged the universe, and I took her to every vet that I could, and there's I couldn't prevent it. And she ended up dying. And I remember one of my habits was always panic. Like, there were situations during which I would fall into a state of panic. And when my dog was dying, I was in a perpetual state of panic. Like, I was just on edge and in panic every second for 8 months. And after going through that, something got the panic got alchemized into grounding. I don't want to say that I don't experience panic the way I used to my whole life, but it's definitely a lot better handled. I can just stay grounded in ways that I never could before. So when you say, how does this happen? By having gone through hell and having lived beyond it, you know, it's just, I don't think there are shortcuts in life towards self-development and eventually, enlightenment. I think it's actually the process of enlightenment, if you will, is a very physical, full of labor kind of thing. Like, you gotta, it's like it's not mystical. Like, people think the spirituality is a mystical thing. I don't find it mystical at all. I think that we become spiritual beings by living the mundane and the day to day. It's actually so physical. The more physical we are, the more grounded we are into the day to day, and the more real we are about the day to day, and the more invested we are in this mundane, human, earthly experience, I think the higher the chance of transcending spiritually. Um, so, I've lived, I lived, I think I've just lived my life like really fully, really, really honestly. I've been really honest with myself in life. I always say that I always think about this golden triangle. And to me, the golden triangle for growth consists of three essential qualities that are honesty, um, humility, and courage. And
Mhm.
whenever I'm stuck in life and I can't move, past an inner obstacle, when I can't get over something emotionally, I always think to myself, what's missing here? Is it courage that's missing? Is it humility that's missing? Is it honesty? And I think that if we walk our lives with these three qualities and live the day to day, the very mundane, but really with these three qualities as three essential pillars by which we interact with ourselves and life and other people, I think that it's inevitable that we grow and transcend into better, more refined human beings. That's really always been my personal commitment to myself. And, I'm a teacher. I think that anybody who has any data or any experience really is responsible for sharing it. I don't know. I don't want to say that we can't fully grow without sharing what we have, but I think it's essential to share with people our wisdom or our knowledge or our experiences. And I've always shared everything that I've learned. I take from one hand and I give with the other. It's always happened this way. And, as an artist, I remember I used to create, I would create installations and performances, interactive performances in which, I would design spaces where people could have like honest, intimate experiences with each other or healing experiences with themselves. But what I found in the art world was I actually don't think that art can change the world. Some people say that art changes the world. I completely disagree with that. I think the practice of art transforms an artist because the practice of art is very mystical, just like the mere experience of spending hours and hours and hours of solitude. That's a mystical experience, and in order to create anything, you need to spend a lot of time alone reflecting, 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 repeating, crafting something, building a skill. That's a spiritual experience. That's a spiritual practice. So I think the practice of art can change someone. But the artifact that is created as a result of the practice, that doesn't really change the world. I live my life believing that, this is a time where like we really need to change gears on this planet. And we are in a big, big transition. And some of us are here to help forward things and bring about this transition. I consider myself one of these humans. And I realized like with the, operating within the art world, that just wasn't going to happen fast enough. And so I just changed ecosystems. Like I realized like education is the only thing that's actually going to forward things. People need to practice. I really am such a firm believer of practice. My entire life is built around ritual practice, ceremony practice, yoga practice, meditation practice. I'm always in practice. And I lead other women into practice, and I'm committed to Iranian women. I don't know why. I am Iranian, so I'm definitely, there's a bond with me and, my nationality and my country and my culture. I also think that there are less resources here than maybe for women, in the West. I'm committed to serving the Iranian women community, and I've devoted my life to Iranian women and to supporting them in healing and recovering their self-expression and their joy. And, I do that primarily through feminine practices like rituals, grief work, and the emotional body, like really focusing on the senses and the body itself and our relationship to one another, our relationships with our mothers and our relationships with our sisters, and rebuilding the safety net of society, which is like women are essentially and femininity is essentially that's that missing safety net that the world needs. Like the world needs to be held right now, and it's the feminine that's here to hold it. And so the more of us who awaken our ability to hold ourselves first and then to be able to hold other people, the faster, we're going to be able to provide safety for the planet, you know, for the population, for the earth. And you can't do everything, you can't help everyone. You got to like choose and pick like where you're going to play. And like I've made my choice, I'm here in Iran and I work with women specifically and with Iranian women specifically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for all of that. It's really beautiful. Yeah, I guess I'll ask, with the state of the world as it is, with what's going on in Gaza, with what's going on in Israel and Iran and many other places on the planet, like what do you think is the most important thing that we can do during this particular time on the planet as we're going through this big transition, changing from one thing into another, knowing that it's going to be messy, complicated, difficult? What's the most important thing to you during this time?
Gosh, we're going through so much. Um, I think this is a period where everything is getting exposed, like the collective shadow is getting exposed. Um, it feels like we live in like an upside down matrix where the truth is lie and lies are the truth. I hope we're being aided by our ET friends and by the goddess and by spirit itself, and that I don't know if we'll see better days in our lifetime. I selfishly would love to see peace on earth, or like a calm, or like just life that isn't so hard, because suffering is the norm on the planet. But suffering doesn't need to be the norm. I'm not talking about like grief. You know what I mean? There is like suffering that makes sense, that is constructive. Like grieving is constructive, but like dumb suffering.
Mhm.
You know what I
That's what
mean?
I call
Like
it
bombs
too.
falling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like bombs like falling over your head. Like, what the fuck? Like, why? 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 Like little children that are just like dropping bombs on each other, and it's the civilians that are like that have to pay for it. It's just ridiculous. And if enough of us wake up to how ridiculous this is and say, like, no, 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 we're not doing that anymore. Sorry. We're not doing that anymore. We're not going to let you do that anymore. I don't know if that's enough, but I sure hope, something's going to change and
Mhm.
turn around. But
Yeah.
yeah, we all want the same thing everywhere in the world, Iranians, Americans, everybody wants the same thing, I think, ultimately. We just want to like just live life.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah. These are enormous questions. And the only answer that I ever get to for me is that as we pull back our energy from these systems that that are not serving anyone and that are causing all the dumb suffering, and create something new, create real relationality in our communities, with each other, with the sky, with the house, with the earth, with the trees, with everything that you're talking about, then we're literally creating something new to replace the inevitability of these systems failing. And I personally think it's going to be messy. I'm an incredibly hopeful person. I'm an incredibly optimistic person. I believe in humanity. And so as this change happens and as we pull back consent as much as we can, because we're living in these systems, we're inside of these
Mm-hmm.
systems. But as we kind of energetically pull back consent from these things and then actively work to create something new, that's what feels to me, it's like what lets me feel like I'm doing something, even though we're told that we're not powerful, that there's really nothing that we can do. And yet, your relationship with the land and your temple, my relationship with my land and my temple, I think that energetic and very real template that we're installing, or kind of blueprint that we're anchoring and installing on the planet, is incredibly powerful. I think our relationship is
Yeah.
incredibly powerful. I think the relationship that I have with so many, I don't know what to call it other than just like this soul family that we've found each
Mm.
other. And it's around the world and
Mm.
it's weird and a lot of it's
Yeah.
online, but there's this
Mm.
undeniable web of relationality that feels directly, it's like a frequency that is not resonant with this other frequency that is on the planet, which is the dumb suffering. It's not resonant with it. And so I think the more that we build this resonance, that inevitably it they won't be able to coexist. And I that is my wildly optimistic and hopeful vision, is that if we anchor in true relationality, goodness, peace in ourselves first, like what you were talking about at the beginning with shadow work, like grace for ourselves first. Because if we can't, my experience, if we don't have compassion and grace for ourselves, we cannot hold anyone else in that space. Wherever we are judging ourselves, wherever we're holding ourselves as not good enough, as wherever we're committing these little violences to ourselves, we still have the potential to do that to other people. So, love, compassion, um, awareness, accountability, shadow work, transformation, alchemy, like all the things that we do internally absolutely translate out to our near communities, to our, your relationship
Mm.
with your father, my relationship with my parents, my relationship with my close circle can then, like, that's actually how peace spreads. And
Yes.
that gives me hope, even though these are like what we see in the world is so horrific, right? I also, and what's on the news, like what the whole world sees, what we collectively are looking at is horrific. What I'm individually looking at and the people around me and in my circles is extraordinary. There are so many people who are saying, okay, got it. Like this system doesn't hold people, catch people, take care of people. So I'm going to create something that does. And there are people like coming together, creating these things. And it's extraordinary. So that's my hopefulness in the face of the great kind of unveiling, the apocalypse, right? The apocalypse means the unveiling, the
Yes.
uncovering, the revealing. So we're seeing ourselves because, as you said, this is our collective shadow that's arising. So we're looking at ourselves, we're looking at
Yes.
the horrible parts of ourselves and saying, okay, I see it. Now I'm going to make a different choice. And those of us who are, me, who has this incredible privilege to live in this peaceful place that I live in, to have a healthy enough body, to have enough capacity to understand the shadow, to do this work, to hold other people, to hold myself, like you said. It is my responsibility. And it's like the most beautiful mission ever, is to take all of this like vitality, energy, resource that I have and create something that directly counters, like I want my archetype for the collective of us who is doing this work is the rebels in Star Wars, the resistance.
Mm.
And it's like scrappy and we are kind of scattered and it's not a movement, because as soon as something's a movement, it gets an egregore that can turn into the thing that we're trying to fight. So it's just like these scrappy fucking people scattered over the planet who are resisting and creating something new. And if we don't see it in our lifetime, we will see it in another lifetime. Like we're not done here in one lifetime. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I'm on fire. I'm inspired. Thank you, Priya. Thanks for being here and
And I'm
talking to
inspired
me.
by you.
Oh, I
Oh,
love
you
you,
are so
honey.
welcome. It's such a privilege to be in conversation with you, to be your friend, your sister, your ally, and um, and to hold space for divine feminine values, alongside with you.
It's
I'm so
it's
grateful to know you.
yeah, same.
And the work that you're doing is incredible. And I've listened to so many of your podcasts by now, and every single, every single one of them has been so inspiring to me, and has just fed my soul so deeply.
Mm.
And I'm really, really, really thankful that you felt like, I had something to share as well on this podcast. It's truly an honor.
Mm.
And I look forward, to our continued journey and to what will be revealed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's undoubtedly, we found each other. We're family for life. There's no doubt in my mind. I hope someday
Yes.
I can visit your
Oh,
temple. Oh my God.
the day where my American friends will come and visit my temple will be the greatest joy of my life. I have waited 40 something years and I will continue to root for that. But
Yeah.
the day where um, diplomatic relations between Iran and the US are back, like the doors are open, something big will have shifted,
Mhm.
and it will be a celebration here in this
Yeah.
house, in this temple.
Oh my gosh.
I
Yeah.
hold on very tight to this vision and this dream.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't feel it as much anymore. Doesn't sound like you feel it as much anymore, but I know that we've both felt the loneliness of creating something physically, mostly by ourselves. We've had tremendous help, right? We have a lot of help. I had a lot of help. Also, we are physically holding down these spaces.
Yes.
And I have come to believe that that is a necessary part of this. And so thankful for the technology that connects us. So thankful that we got to be in body together, you know? Um, and also knowing that it's not going to be forever, that we're kind of holding these spaces uh, by ourselves. It feels less and less like that to me anyway, but seeing the
Mm.
time when we start to come together in body again, and how extraordinary that is. I mean, I
Oh,
just will never forget one of the most powerful experiences of my life is being with you at Ghost Ranch and those other women, and doing like a yoga class and then dancing together, and then taking turns, not completely unspoken, completely organic, falling to the floor in grief, and all of our sisters gathering around us, all of these women gathering around each person and holding her. And one of the most profound experiences of my life is being in body in spaces like that. And it nourishes me and it gives me hope for the future. It really, really does. It's like that's who humans are.
yeah. Yeah, these are the moments where we realize how similar
Mm-hmm.
our how similar we are in our desires, in our pain, in our needs, even though we're from, you know, completely different parts of the world. Um, our needs and our desires and our wants and our pain, it transcends culture, it transcends nationality, it transcends even gender.
Mm-hmm.
And we all want the same things, all
Yeah.
of us. And it's pretty basic, the things that we want.
Mm-hmm.
We're not asking for a lot. Human beings are not asking for a lot,
Right.
really. You
Right.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
the bottom line is pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, yes, so cheers to the possibility of being in the flesh together in our temples around the world,
Mm-hmm.
all the goddess temples that are birthing as we speak,
Mm-hmm.
all of them, like little, you know, uh, these like magical points of light all across the globe. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
They're everywhere, and the goddess, oftentimes, she doesn't scream loud, it's not a big performance. It all happens, so much of it is not seen on camera. Most of the work that is meaningful is done in silence, and it's done away from the gaze of the public, but
Mhm.
it's happening, and we can feel it. And we discover them when we find each other, when the universe crosses our paths, like dead, like, you know, you're like in the middle of the woods somewhere, in this like dome, like, away from everything. And here I am, like in the middle of the desert, like away from everything. And we're doing like really significant work.
Mhm.
And, uh, things that oftentimes no one will ever know, no one will ever hear about, no one will ever see. But yet it's the most profound kind of alchemical work that is happening. And there are many other ones like us
Yeah.
across the globe. And, and we're all connected energetically together, and we don't know it,
Hmm.
but we're connected. And I think eventually one day, uh, we'll be able to see that web,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
there's a web that's being weaved, this web of safety that is essentially an extension of the goddess.
Hmm.
That's who's reawakening. And this time she's she's not kidding anymore. She's ferocious. Is
Hmm.
that the right word that I'm using? She's got a sword in her hand this time, and she'll
Hmm.
use it when and if necessary. She's
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 done that
not
in
she's
both of
not.
our lives. Both of our lives have been,
Oh yeah,
she's held our feet to the fire. There's nowhere else to go. There's nothing else to do. Like
yes,
do the mission. That's it.
yes.
And we're like, oh,
But
fuck.
also,
Okay.
oh yes. Oh, I remember once, uh when like I was having, I was on a psychedelic journey, and I remember like she told me to take a walk around my house, and my house, like, it was a construction site. This is like a 300-year-old historic house that is in ruins that I'm rebuilding. And I'm not even halfway there. Half of my house is still in a ruin. But I remember at the time, 3 years ago, it was 100% a ruin. And she said to me, "Take a look around here. It looks terrible, and but it will look like paradise one day. But what I need you to know is that it's not your paradise. It's mine, and you're working for me. Don't forget that. I will turn this ruin into paradise, but it's my paradise." And I knew that I was, I was in service of her.
Hmm.
And um, while that can feel maybe to some like it's a burden, like what a privilege to be in service to the goddess,
Hmm.
to have a life that is in service to her. But I also, so yes, she definitely has, is not, fucking around, but also when in our embodiment of her, like us women, we're also not fucking around anymore. We also have a sword in our hands. So I think that's really important. I just wanted to add that in at the very tail end of our conversation. You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much. Such an
Thank
honor
you.
to be with you always in any context. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And yeah, I just know you're one of the women in my life that will always be in my life and I can always go to. And if we don't talk for 2 months, it doesn't matter. We come right back together. We're holding that points of that web of of what we're weaving together. And we're both doing that. So it's an honor. I love you so much. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you so much to Priya for sharing her wisdom and her experiences. I did pull out a section of our conversation that I'm making available only to patrons. In this section, Priya speaks beautifully about ancestor practices and offerings and working with the shadow during this last eclipse season, which is about when we recorded this. And it is such a treasure of a story, and also so instructional with how to work with shadow. It's just really, really beautiful. I wanted to make it special and provide that to patrons. So check it out if you are a patron, and you can consider becoming a patron if you're not already by visiting patreon.com/Robin Lassiter. Yeah, the Patreon is actually getting pretty exciting. In January, we're starting live Zoom calls, and these will be twice a month, community gatherings and Q&As, and that happens at the $10 tier. It's a great way to engage with me and my work and with our extraordinary community. These gatherings are also available to any active client and to anyone who is or who has been involved in my groups and cohorts. So if that's you and you haven't been receiving my newsletter with updates about that, please reach out. I can give you that information and get you on the mailing list for that. Yeah, I guess that's it for today. You can do all of that and more, including booking a one-on-one session with me at my brand new website, robinlassiter.com.